is time. The GMSS fab, inner fenders, all the things, they're right here. Firewall panels, let's open it. Out. There's 60 to 66 inner fenders. Oh my gosh. These are so much more beautiful in person than even in the pictures. Dude, oh my gosh, let's pull these out. So you're checking out, these are 60 to 66. These are your front panels. Got the firewall panels. And these are made to bolt in. You just drill the holes and you can put riv nuts or bolts and nuts, whatever you want to do to mount those in. And then the grand finale. These are the 60 to 66 GMSS inner fenders. Wow. That is some killer fabrication right there. That is amazing. Great job, guys. Can't wait to install these. You just put these on your fender and drill some holes and bolt them to your fender. Then on the back side, you're gonna drill holes and you can use riv nuts or bolts and nuts, whatever you need to bolt these in. So this is a bolt-in inner fender. Bolt in the sides, bolt in the back, and just like this on the front, you're gonna drill holes and put riv nuts is what I'm gonna do. That way I can unbolt it anytime. I don't have to get to the nut on the back side. So I stripped the firewall down. I put some of that sweet patina blackout paint on the firewall because now we're getting ready to put the GMSS firewall panels on there. And one of the cool things about this is it's completely bolt-on. So they make a weld-on version, but this one is bolt-on. So all I'm gonna do is clamp this up onto the firewall and I'm going to self-tap some screws in here just to mark it to get it tight. And then I'll come back and drill and put some threaded riv nuts in the top section here. That'll really finish this off and make it look nice. We're gonna do the passenger side panel first because I'm not installing AC yet on this truck. So this panel is not gonna have any holes in it. I think what I wanna do is just put this panel on here, and once I get the inner fender on there, run the AC lines along the side of the fender so you don't see those in the engine bay at all. But I'm just gonna clamp this one up, drill the holes. Once the riv nuts and the hardware get here, we'll go ahead and do some of that. Get both sides mocked up. On the driver's side, we're gonna have to make a couple cuts. One of the cuts we're gonna have to make is a circle and some screw holes where the master cylinder goes, and then also the steering. So what I'm gonna do on that, same way as the passenger side, I'm just gonna clamp this up. I'm gonna screw it in with a couple self-tappers. That way it's not moving around and I know exactly where it's at. And then on the back side of the cab, inside the cab, I'm gonna draw where the steering is and where the brake master cylinder is. And I'm just gonna draw inside, kind of trace it, take this back off, and then I'm going to use a hole saw to cut the round part, mark my holes, and then just kind of do it one step at a time to get all the holes drilled where they need to go. I'll have to use a hole saw right here to cut out the round part of the steering linkage, and then I'm gonna have to use the body saw to kind of make the other cut on the bottom. So just to explain that a little bit more, whenever I get over here and I bolt up the firewall panel right here. I'm gonna go inside the cab and I'm gonna trace this hole and I'm gonna put some dots. This hole and this hole is what holds up the master cylinder. Put some dots right there so I know where to drill out those holes. Then I'm gonna trace this on the bottom. I'm gonna use a hole saw to cut out the round part and then the body saw to cut out that to really match that. And then the steering part will just bolt over top of the new panel. I'm gonna clean it up really nice, make it look good. On the passenger side, usually you have this hole right here. That panel is just gonna cover this whole piece. We're not gonna cut any holes in it right now. And whenever I get ready to run my AC line, I'm probably gonna run them along the inner fender on the side right here and then go in somewhere over here under the inner fender. That way you don't see any of the AC lines. On the middle section here, you can see that I didn't paint it black yet. I'm gonna fill in this hole, that hole, and then all the smaller holes. I am gonna leave this big hole up here and just run the painless wiring harness through that hole. I might have to make that one a little bit bigger. The painless wiring harness comes with the rubber grommet, so I need to measure and see what size that is. Once I get those welded up, I'll go ahead and coat that in the blackout paint too. Then we'll send off the panels for paint. It's gonna be hard to see in here. You can see where I sweet potatoed it. Kind of got a nice seal in the cab. But here, this is what you wanted to see. We're gonna trace around right here. Here's where the master cylinder goes. We're gonna trace this and then put a dot where those holes are. I'm gonna trace the steering place right here and also put a dot where those 3 screw holes are. And that will get us what we need to cut out. Now, you'll see right here, this is where the wiring harness plugged into. So we can cut that hole out too. It's gonna be under the inner fenders, but I'm not sure I wanna do that yet. So I've marked the holes on the back side, and it's hard to mark the small holes with a marker. So I was gonna take a small drill bit on a drill and drill through the holes into the panel this way, and I'll know exactly where those holes are. But before I start drilling holes in it, I'm gonna put the inner fender back in here on the driver's side to make sure everything lines up correctly, and then I'll drill those holes and we'll get to cutting this panel and making sure everything lines up correctly. As you can see, I put the bolts in the front pieces. I want to go ahead and get those all the way bolted in with some self-tappers here, get everything lined up. That way I can kind of eyeball everything, make sure it's all good. When everything seems good to go, I will go in and then start to cut out the holes for the steering shaft and the master cylinder. I'm gonna go ahead and self-tap 4 holes here, kind of evenly spread across, and then I will come back and put riv nuts in the fenders as well. And I've got nice hardware to go right here. I want to do 4 kind of like this to keep them away from the wheel, to keep the riv nut, which it shouldn't ever hit it there, but just to make sure everything clears. So I just spread these out 12 inches, started a little bit off the edge, about 1.5 inches. I'm going to self-tap these in. So to make sure I got this lined up, all I did is this front has a nice little lip here. So I lined that front up with the lip of the body line on the fender. And then I aligned it here, and then on the back it has that same thing. Your inner fender has a body line there, so I just pushed it all the way against that as far as I can, and then I just self-tapped it in. I want to get everything solid, self-tapped in, and then I can take it all off and I'll know where I need to run my riv nuts. I'll just drill those holes out bigger. I'll put the riv nuts in there. These will be drilled out bigger. I'll set everything back in there, make sure it all bolts up, and we'll know everything fits. It's definitely a tight fit when you do the bolt-in inner fenders and the bolt-in firewall panels. Everything's a little tight, so it's going to be interesting when I get everything painted to be really careful. But I think it's all going to turn out good. Definitely looks great. So far, it's been very easy as well. Same goes right here. There's a little lip that folds down. You want to align that to your body line. That's how you know you've got it lined up. And the same with the back. And this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and measure the same measurements that I had on that side and self-tap this in. Then we will align this to get it level. And then we'll go under the wheel well here and self-tap this bracket into the panels. So here's a recap. It's not much to it. I clamped the firewall panels to the firewall, got them lined up how I wanted them, and then I just self-tapped them in. That's temporary. That's not how I'm gonna leave them, but I'm gonna use those self-tap holes to know where to drill the holes for the riv nuts and the bolts and washers and all that kind of stuff. Once I got the firewall panels in, then I put in the inner fenders, kind of lined those up, trimmed just a little bit right here to get that to clear. It was a tight fit, but it fits really nicely. Then I lined this part up with the little indentation here, mocked that up, and then I put these on to make sure that these corners match up and everything is squared away. After I got that done, I self-tapped these into the fender just to hold it tight. Again, those are temporary. I'm gonna put some really nice hardware on there. And then when I got the outsides self-tapped, then I went into the inner fenders and I made this line match. I pulled the inner fender out, and on the underside there's little tabs that you can bolt, or right now I have it self-tapped into the firewall panels to line everything up, as you can see there. But looks really good. Everything is just in there temporary. I'm gonna go ahead and go on the inside of the cab and drill through the screw holes this way to mark where the 2 holes for this is and the holes that go around the steering shaft. Then I'll pull all this off and then cut out the holes where that goes. Then I'll bolt that back up and make sure everything clears. Earlier you saw me trace the line out right there where the steering goes and then where the brakes go as well. What I'm gonna do now is I couldn't really get a marker into this hole, so I'm just gonna take a drill with a small drill bit and just drill a hole right in the middle of all 3 of those holes and the holes up top, and then I'll know exactly where the screw holes go, which will be great because I can go ahead and drill out those holes a little bit bigger than what the hole is, so there's a little bit of adjustment in there, and then I can cut out the other panels and have everything looking good. Just trying to get a straight shot here. We've got our driver's side panel here, and we need to do 2 things. This is the master cylinder. We need to cut this out and then drill these 2 holes for the bolts that bolt that in. And then we need to drill out a circle here where the steering component goes, and then use our body saw to cut all around. I may end up just cutting a little slit into this and using the body saw for the whole thing. We'll see how that goes. But just get you a hole saw. This is a little bit bigger than this circle because remember, I drew the line from the inside, so the hole's actually going to be bigger. Hey, I'm super excited. I just got the GMSS firewall panels painted and I'm ready to install them on Francis. So some of you were asking how I'm gonna install them. I found these little bolts with the black washers on them on Amazon, and I'm gonna link these on the website. We're gonna check out how these look. In case you didn't know, I went through and I riv nut everywhere that I had self-tapped it, and then I'm gonna come back and use these bolts to bolt it all in. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you don't currently subscribe to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That'll help me out. All the links to the parts that I mentioned in this video are going to be in the description. All you have to do is click the title of this video and it'll drop down. It's going to have a link to my website, a link to GMSSfab.com, all the different parts that I use with the rib nuts, the hardware, the fasteners, and also other information about the parts. Don't forget to check out my website, simpleC10.co. It has the air ride guide and it also has the LS swap guide that I'm currently working on. It's got a list of all the different parts that I use and recommend, step-by-step tutorials, build profiles, and all the other information that'll help you build your truck.